everyone, and welcome once again to the vast and ominous comic book vault. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
Hi, Dan. How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
Well, it's time for reviewing some more comics, Dan. We've got tons and tons of stuff, new acquisitions, and my God, was this a big week.
This is an understatement. We say that every week, but this week I had 12 books.
Yeah,
so
I thought a couple
weeks
ago was huge, but boy, we've got a lot to jump through this time, so we'll knock it out as quickly as possible, but this might be a somewhat longer episode, because not only do we have a lot to talk about, but we have a lot of really interesting things to talk about, and some brilliant things to talk about. I want to, as always, thank Elite Comics out here in Overland Park, Kansas, for helping us out with the show, and if you're ever in the Overland Park area, in the Kansas City area, be sure to check them out. They're awesome. Dan, we're going to start off right now with the stuff we read together, and that begins with IDW, with Ninja Turtles, number 23. This is the second part of City Fall, and I was excited about this event before, but now I'm flabbergasted. This was maybe the best issue of this book. I'm going to go that far. I was really impressed with this issue. Go ahead, Dan.
It seems like in the middle of every story arc with this book since the first arc, I had said that my favorite issue of the series had happened. That happened when one of the instances that's actually referenced in here, I think, the little issue where Splinter had confronted Casey Jones' dad. That was previously my favorite issue of the series, and I think this one topped it for me. Just because we're getting the culmination of just sort of like the Daredevil book had ended its big 2-year epic storyline that it had been telling since the beginning. We're getting towards the end of that here, and it's just exciting to see every little thing that they had set up pay off here. And I just love what they're doing with all the characters. I love how benevolent this Casey Jones is and how much of an impact he has on all the people around him and the entire supporting cast. They really set him up to be one of the more important characters, and I love how much of a repercussion his injury has had on this family. It's really thrown him for a loop.
You know, you were comparing this to Wade's Daredevil, and that's absolutely spot on. Because something that both books have in common is that they have so many characters and so many threads that you would assume that they would drop something or forget something, and it never happens. In this book, I kind of thought we were finished with the Casey Jones dad thing, and that comes back in not a big way, but a subtle way. And was, without giving it away, was kind of the most human moment in the book, and made me give any kind of a crap about that character for the first time ever. And I was impressed that it went there, given that it had that kind of subtlety there in that scene in the middle of a lot of really big, not over the top, but just dramatic kind of like big comic book stuff. I mean, you know, we're in the middle of what's about to be a huge, giant war between supervillains. I mean, that's where we're headed here, and everybody's coming back. All these big characters. You know, you wonder, why do we have so many characters in this book? There are a lot of people that haven't really been paid off yet. We don't know why they're here, and now they're starting to. Now they're starting to pop in. Now they're starting to pay off. And also, this is so well organized between the different books, because we're not just talking about Ninja Turtles. We're talking about the other offshoots that they've been doing. And Dan and I have said this a million times, but if you're only reading this, you're not reading everything that you should be reading, because they have found a way to make it all relevant and all matter. And like, we just reviewed the old Hobb book last week. That immediately plays in. How impressed were you that immediately mattered?
There was even, it's not to a gratuitous and to a point where you feel cheated, but it literally picks up mid-dialogue sequence from the end of the old Hobb issue.
Yeah, I think you could enjoy this and understand it without having that, but if you... Yeah, and because let me backtrack. I did say that everybody should be reading everything. I'm only saying that because it's good. I think they're doing a good job. Exactly. I think that Waltz is absolutely doing a good job of making this stand alone where you could get it without those. I haven't read all of the micro-series stuff. I haven't read all of it, and I'm fine. So, I mean, like you could do it, but I mean, like... For those of us that went the extra mile and paid the extra $4 for those books, they're already mattering. And I really appreciate that as a consumer, if nothing else.
Right, and I would say the only thing outside of the main book, recommended reading-wise for this arc specifically, I would say would be Secret History of the Foot Clan, because there are some things I don't think you'd be able to fully understand. Like Kitsune, for example, I don't think you'd get the full impact of her character on this whole thing if you didn't read that.
Yeah, if somebody were to make the criticism that that should have been part of the main book, I'm not going to argue with that. I could understand.
Yeah, I agree, because it's playing in really well. That miniseries is playing in really well thematically with what's going on here. I love that. In that book, it was all about Shredder and this predestined thing, and and we have him going into Leonardo's mind here and sort of changing something about the way he perceives how he was brought up. So it's this nature versus nurture thing, and Shredder's looking to fulfill his destiny, but changing someone's nurture and bending his will to him at the same time. It's a really interesting parallel between the two of them.
Something I find absolutely terrifying about this. Well, I'm sorry. Let me go back to Secret History of the Foot Clan for a second.
Sure.
If that had been part of the main book, we would have gotten this months later, and so I am glad that we got it all at once. For those of us that are loving this enough and are willing to pay extra to get more of it quicker. Obviously, if you're reading this in trade, it's not that big of a deal because you can just wait, But those of us that want it when it comes out. But anyway, what is terrifying about what you just said is that I think that's what Shredder's doing. What I don't know is if there's any truth to it. What I'm terrified of is, Splinter has seemed to be a very benevolent character in this. We have gotten some of his background in Secret History of the Foot Clan, but I feel like we got more of a sense of exactly what Shredder was, and I felt like he was sidestepped a little bit. I do feel like there is part of his past that I'm not privy to, and I think unless I'm missing something, unless I'm missing parts of his history that I forgot about from there. But I'm telling you, man, when I wonder if there's not a grain of truth to some of what Shredder is saying, specifically about, I don't want to give anything away, about exactly how the reincarnation is working. He's basically trying to make Leonardo think that Splinter has not been totally honest with them, and the trouble is, the scary thing is, that makes more sense than anything.
Yeah, it does, because we have a Splinter here who has made mistakes in his past. We saw that he had a lot more things in common with Shredder before he put on the armor. He was angry and undisciplined until he met his wife. So there might be some things that he had done. He might have some skeletons in his closet that we just don't know about.
This is going to be a lot of fun to discuss when we get down the road and we've gotten past this and we can actually talk about a very specific scene that I wish we could talk about here, and I just don't want to give it away. But I wonder if Splinter isn't going to become a little bit more morally ambiguous as time goes on, and I would love to see that. I think that's really interesting. I wonder if he's not going to be a little bit more of like an Odin figure, not godlike, but I just mean as a father, he keeps things from his son. He thinks for the greater good, and maybe he has to choose between the lesser of two evils. But this whole thing with Leonardo would be far more interesting if it wasn't total brainwashing. If it ends up being mind control, I'm going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I agree. And I was thinking of sort of a Star Wars parallel in that we have the wise old master that you think knows everything, and, he's still speaking in half-truths to you. You don't know it, and Leonardo maybe didn't find something about his backstory until later on, the father thing. That was what my mind immediately went to, and I find it interesting, too, that we have two members of the family falling here, and it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if one of them, I would presume, isn't going to come out on top. Thematically, I don't think the story would work if we have both characters being completely rebuilt as they were before. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. Yeah, one of them, I'm not sure, will physically recover.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see either of them die necessarily, but
it would be strange. I know this is going to sound weird. It would be strange this early to kill anybody off, just because this is 23 issues in, and we've been doing this for a couple of years now. But as far as like the history of the retooled Ninja Turtles, we're not that far in yet. It'd be weird to kill someone by now. We need to move on. But the only other thing I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't mention is part of what makes this such a good issue is it's the best artwork in the series.
Oh, it is. They got everybody who's worked in the series so far to work on this. Plus, you got Matheus Santaluco doing the majority of the interiors. It is just a tour de force in IDW Ninja Turtles, and they've had great artists on this book since the beginning, so it's fantastic.
Of any book that I've read in the last month or two, if I was going to sit down and just reread a single issue, this would be it, just to get the experience of that artwork again. It's really astounding. Let's move on to more astounding, shall we, Dan? With Daredevil number 27, but not astounding Daredevil, because that's never been a title of Daredevil. But yeah, so this is basically the end of where Wade has been going for all this time from the beginning. Now, I'm sure he has plans down the road, but
yes, and there are some things that he had been building over this 2 years that are not resolved, I should say, by the end.
Yeah, not many. I mean, like, a lot of stuff is.
Most of it is, but there are some hanging plot threads.
The big villain plot, the big bullseye thing, that's all wrapped up here, and it's really, really, really good. I think that the thing that impressed me the most is that all of the Daredevil background stuff pays off. We've been dealing a lot lately with Daredevil's powers, with the chemical that caused them. Bullseye's been manipulating him in various ways, but a big one is trying to create somebody who has the same power set, which he did. And we've got another great battle with that guy here, and that finishes the whole thing off. And then we get these amazing character parallels between the two. I didn't know that's where this was going, but I also didn't know it was Bullseye until like last issue, I guess. So anyway, Dan, I know you loved this. What do you think?
I just loved everything about this, just because it is. See, here's the thing. Mark Waid is really good at just taking characters and boiling them down to what makes them endearing. And the thing about Matt Murdock, to me, that makes him inspiring, makes him a great character, is the fact that he's always the underdog. He's always going to get up. He's always going to fight for the goal that he's going up against. Everyone underestimates him because he's not just because he's handicapped, but because he's a guy that classically everything doesn't really go right for him. And Bullseye does that here. He underestimates Matt Murdock, and that ends up being his downfall. And he's the underdog in this fight, and I really like that. And you have these really nice parallels. Wade is putting Bullseye and Daredevil in a situation where they're both afraid, and he takes away the two things that make them who they are. Bullseye, without him being able to throw things and kill people, that's like his whole world. Same thing with Matt Murdock. If he's afraid, he can't be Daredevil.
Yeah.
And he puts them both in those positions because of each other, and they both end up thinking the same way. They meticulously plan and think about things, and they even set up their plans in the same way to a degree.
They do,
how they're
and
dealing with it.
I really like that he draws attention to the fact that Bullseye's never operated like this before.
Exactly.
He's like, Bullseye, this is not your modus operandi, and he's like, yeah, well, things change a little bit, dude. I'm totally crippled and deaf, and the only thing I can do is see now. And there's an obvious parallel there, but it's really interesting that now Bullseye has been completely crippled. It's like the movie. You took away my hands. That's not. Yeah. Bullseye cannot operate that way. So this is the only way that you could make a mastermind Bullseye plot work, is you take away his motor skills. He has to develop his mind. I just thought of this. So basically what you've got is the exact same thing. I'm going to stretch, and I'm going to be annoying, and I'm going to look too far into this, Dan. Basically what you have is Daredevil, who is Matt Murdock, who obviously got super enhanced senses when he lost his sight. You've got Matt Murdock, who loses everything but his sight, and then his mind grows.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Bullseye was never known for his mind before,
No, exactly. And to a degree, Matt Murdock wasn't necessarily either.
Yeah,
even though that's in his character, in his origin, his dad's always telling him to study the books, and he becomes a lawyer, and he's at the top of his class. He should be a smart guy,
Yeah, the point I'm making is metaphorically, by losing everything else, it is Bullseye's sight that is enhanced. It's his ability to see into into the future to make choices to play chess better, to guess at different possibilities.
Those people.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fascinating. I found the ending disturbing, and I think I'm supposed to, but I really did. Something happens at the end of this, and of course I don't want to give away the ending because everybody should experience it for themselves. But I mean, like, one of the most terrifying things that I can think of that can happen to a person that has always scared me, the possibility of it ever happening to me. It's something that disturbs me, bothers me, and it happens at the end of this. And there's no other way it could have ended, it has to happen that way, and it's really interesting. Boy, where do you go with Bullseye from here? I mean, I can't wait to see when he eventually shows up again. Because Shadowland, I was like, they didn't kill off Bullseye. When they killed off Bullseye in Shadowland, I was like, he'll be back in 3 or 4 months. I am so impressed that it took this long.
Me too, and I was really impressed with Mark Waid in that I didn't think he would touch the Miller stuff, really, because he was trying to get so far away from that. And this, the more recent issues where we were starting to get it revealed, that it was Bullseye and stuff, this parallels Miller's stuff in spades. Like, in Miller's run, there's a hand ninja that's sort of, you don't know who he is, and he's sort of immortal. He's really good at what he does. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's really so much Wakari, and he goes back to that whole resurrection hand bringing Bullseye back to life ritual that they use with Elektra, and he takes Daredevil to a really dark place emotionally in here. But I think by the end of this, the whole point is, we can take Daredevil to those dark places. We can have him in emotional turmoil and stuff. And we can still have fun at the same time.
Yeah, and most importantly, like Matt Murdock can still find some joy somewhere,
Exactly, because I read an interview with Frank Miller in the back of one of the Daredevil trades from his run, and he was talking about how he didn't want to make Matt Murdock a dark character. He wanted to make the world around him dark, and Matt Murdock was the optimistic man that lived in that world, and we needed a person like that to, like Superman and the other superheroes to aspire to, and that's what I think Waid is getting back to a little bit here that had been lost, and I was really happy with where this went.
This has all been an amalgam of different kinds of Daredevil stories, and he's found a way to fluidly make that work and make it its own thing also. Like there is a very specific tone to this book, which was achieved by melding a lot of other tones. Now, I hate to think that we have so much history for some of these characters that the only way to do anything that feels original now is to put it all in a boiling pot. I'm really interested to see how much longer Waid is going to be on this book and where he can go from here, because I feel like the ending of this really feels like the culmination of everything he's been working on, regardless of the fact that there are some other threads that aren't quite tied up. I feel like thematically and emotionally, this was the point he wanted to make with this book. And that makes me wonder if the rest of it will continue to be that much of a melting pot, or if it's not going to take on more of a life of its own. I really wonder about that right now.
Too. And, I would have to say, now that this is all said and done, I had sort of resisted saying this until I wanted to see what Waid's endgame was.
Sure.
This is, I think, one of the best Daredevil runs that the character has ever seen. Now that we've closed the door on it and everything, I think this is going to go down in history as one of the best ones. And I can't say enough good things about it. Bravo, Waid, Somni, Paula Rivera, Marcus Martin, all people involved. It was fantastic.
We're going to have to do an epic review on this.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Let's go ahead and move on. As much as I'd love to do a whole show on that, let's go ahead and move on. Age of Ultron, Book 10 AI. So obviously these days, when we get to the end of an event at Marvel, we can't be done with the event. No, of course not. Because if you enjoyed the event, we can get more money out of you. Having said that, I'm just joking. Does it bother you? Well, I don't want to say that. Maybe you don't have the same opinion I have. I'll say this. The event I thought was over, but this is its best issue.
It's its best issue by far.
That's hilarious. It's done, and this is its best issue.
What's really ironic about it too? This is the end of the day, an advertisement for another Marvel ongoing series, just like the 10-issue series was.
Yeah, it's better than
this is actually a story.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, I'm going to say this. If you read Age of Ultron and you didn't want to read this because you were like, well, it's just an extra book, I think Age of Ultron's better after you read this. I really do.
I think so, too, because it gives...
and I'm not just saying that because it's Wade. I mean, we just praised Wade up and down. It's Wade again, but that's not why. It's just that good. I mean, like, I've never cared about Hank Pym. I really cared about him here. And let me also say this. I'm sorry. If you don't know anything about Ant-Man or Giant Man or all the things Pym has been, because that got funny, by the way. When he started talking about himself as if he were 4 different people. If you don't know this character at all, this is a wonderful place to learn.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Being someone that hasn't read a ton of, like, 60s, 70s Avengers comics where Hank Pym is a big thing in those, the only thing I've ever read Hank Pym in and really liked him was Wade's Daredevil and this here. And this kind of feels like a pilot for an Ant-Man book, or like a point, you know how they did that Guardians of the Galaxy .1 that sort of went over Star-Lord's origin? I feel like this could have been that for an Ant-Man book. Just because we went back to his origin and sort of examined who he was when he was young and paralleling that with where he's going in the future. I really liked this because it begs a really interesting question about Hank Pym's character. Like, you take Ultron out of the equation and Hank Pym out of the equation, like was done in Age of Ultron, and like Hank Pym essentially didn't make a difference in how bad or worse the universe ended up, and that really eats at him because he's wanted to change the world his entire life, and that was such an interesting way to take the character.
Yeah, we just spent 10 issues setting up a 1-issue character arc is basically what we had, or at least in my opinion, for what I ended up caring about, because there are some interesting things to think about with Age of Ultron, but by and large it's about what happens when you take Hank Pym out of the equation, and until you get to this book you don't really 100% understand why that causes what it causes, and his whole character arc in this is realizing that he's not just important as a scientist, he's important as a superhero. And if he hadn't been a superhero and gone off and saved all those people, then the world turns into what it turned into. And so, his character arc is all about learning that he can just be that he can just be himself, and I love it when that's the moral of the story. By the way, when it's just, what it's all about, basically. I'm not giving too much away, but if you don't want to read this, then this will tell you something. It's basically everybody growing up told Hank Pym that he needed to create useful things that would be profitable, and it's basically a character arc about him learning that he can do as much good or more just being creative, and it's hard for me, being me, to not really appreciate that. It's great.
100%. I really, really enjoyed that we get a Hank Pym in here that is definitively different, like you had said, from all the other scientists in the Marvel Universe, like Bruce Banner and Tony Stark. And it gives him a distinct purpose as a person in this universe, I think, where, like, Tony Stark is what Hank Pym sort of resisted growing up to be, the guy that made all the stuff that was profitable, and this is all about Hank Pym sort of resisting everybody else's expectations that are thrust upon him and being his own person. And I really find that to be an endearing message. I agree.
I'd like to make a prediction. I think that, and I would love, of course, to see Wade write this character somewhere. I were talking before the show about how this is basically a setup for this new book, Avengers AI, which I think we're both planning on checking out. I'm going to try it. And
I might.
Oh, okay. I know you had talked about it. I'm definitely going to try it. But anyway, so you got that going on, and it's not Wade, and after this I kind of wish it was. My prediction is, I don't know who would write it, but my prediction is sometime around when the Ant-Man movie comes out, or right after it, they'll try a solo Ant-Man book.
I don't doubt it. They did Ant-Man Season 1 recently, as a matter of fact, too, by DeFalco, and if they're doing, like, original graphic novels for Ant-Man, I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to be giving them a book soon.
Did you pick up on something that I'm going to be very surprised if it's coincidence? I don't know how this works, and there's a chance it's just coincidence, but this is so bizarre.
Yeah.
Because Age of Ultron set up this character. His grandmother's name is Angela.
I didn't even notice that.
That's bizarre. I mean, we just set up Angela.
If Angela is Hank Pym's grandmother.
Somehow, I don't get it, but here's the thing too. I'm just gonna throw this out here because I know a lot about Spawn now, and I know about Angela's real backstory. I said last time that I thought that when they set up Angela at the end of Guardians, that they kind of just ripped her from Image, and that she's maybe the same character. If this has anything to do with that, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see that that's... Is there any way that's coincidence? I mean, like, in Age of Ultron, with 5 coming out, with Guardians, is there any chance that that's coincidence? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let me ask you a question. Like, you know that Cagliostro guy that's an old man in Spawn? Is he an angel, too?
No. Cog is an ex-Spawn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, if angels can, like, turn into old people and guide people, maybe Angela did that. I don't know.
Well, it's possible. I don't know exactly what their power sets are, but I imagine that's maybe something they could do. Here's what I was thinking, though. Angela is, according to Curse of the Spawn, which take that with a grain of salt, but according to Curse of the Spawn, at least, Angela is the culmination, because we got her origin there, is the culmination of the souls of various people, and I think they're mostly, if not all, mothers. And she's the culmination of the souls of mothers. Like 5 or 6 of them come together and they create. Well, I think later on there's more, but a bunch of souls of mothers come together to create Angela. And I guess it's possible somehow that she's one of the souls that's part of Angela or something. But I would be very surprised if that backstory was fit into Marvel. I really don't think they'll do that. So I don't know, but I keep that in the back of your minds, everybody, because I don't think it's a coincidence that you call her Angela in that book.
Yeah, especially since that was the big reveal of the issue previous to this. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either.
And they called her that several times. I felt like it was in her face a little bit. I think they want me to be noodling this. You know? Not me, not me personally. I just mean the reader. I think they want the reader to be noodling this.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just because, like, I have no connection to that character whatsoever, I wasn't even thinking about that. But I want to go reread it now and just see how many times they say it. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's early. I mean, I want to say, let me see how early it comes up. Like 3rd or 4th page.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's quick, but I was just like, what? Yeah, he keeps calling her that, and that's what's interesting is that like. It's his grandmother. He calls her Angela, not even like grandma or anything.
Right? Yeah, that's true.
I mean, her name is Angela Pym. We get a tombstone.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, boy, it'd be crazy if that was a coincidence. You'd be like, Wade, what are you doing? Of all the names you could have picked. Anyway, let's not belabor that. Let's move on. And anyway, this is good. Let's move on to Guardians of the Galaxy number 4. Still one of my favorite books right now, Dan. This is really fun.
Fantastic.
Hey, go ahead, man.
I really liked that we got a character issue for 2 of the characters that I thought were the least fleshed out in the book so far. Or at least I gotten the least amount of cool things to do. Like Rocket Raccoon hasn't been like fleshed out, but he's been really funny and had things to do so far. Gamora and Tony Stark, I feel, are 2 characters that, especially with Tony Stark, you don't really know why he's there. Other than to sell the book, I suppose. But this really gives him. You get a nice insight to his character, why he's there, the sorts of things he's thinking about while he's out in the galaxy and things like that. So I really appreciated that. And Gamora is a really interesting character. I didn't really know much about her other than what I had learned in the sort of little prequel digital comics they did, where they talked about her being Thanos' daughter and stuff. But it'll be really interesting to see how that all plays into the upcoming plots with Infinity and things. I'm really interested to see that. It's just a fun little interlude issue.
I like that, and I'm gonna spoil a little something. I don't think this will annoy anybody. But I like that Tony Stark has come up that has tried to sleep with a woman that he can't deal with. That is so funny. She's just a little too much for Tony Stark. That was maybe one of the funniest right after bed sequences I have ever read.
Oh, I thought it was so fun. Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say. That was really funny. There's a lot of setup stuff here. This is very much an interlude issue. Like you said, it's giving us stuff for Gamora. It's letting us know that there's a bounty out for Gamora, which I don't think we knew, and this bounty hunter that comes after her, and some just fun, amusing bar scene stuff. And I like that whenever Groot says something, people actually, like, he says, "I am Groot," but that's actually a language, and people understand what he's saying, and it's just really funny.
I think that's funny too, and I thought Drax was hilarious when he was drunk at the bar, and he was just yelling like "yes" whenever people would ask him things. I thought that was really funny. This is just sort of a fun hang out at the bar issue, and I really like that. Bendis is the guy you want for a issue like that, because he's so good at dialogue. For anybody else, I might have been a little bit bored, but because it's Bendis, he kept me all the way through it, kept me interested. So, I mean, there's not really much to say about this, I don't think, because not a lot really happens, but it's fun and it's interesting.
Yeah, but it's wonderfully entertaining, and these characters have very distinctive voices, and it's one of the best escapist comic books right now at Marvel, or really any place, I think. But it's also, it's also getting some story told. It's just not as dense as last issue, because last issue got a lot of story told.
Right, exactly.
Well, let's go and move on then to All New X-Men number 13.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's really nice of whoever made this decision. It might have been Bendis, I don't know. I think it was really nice of whoever made the decision to put the to put the speech in the back of this. Again, for anybody that hasn't happened to have been reading Uncanny Avengers, the speech that Havoc has in that, because that should be permeating all the X-Men books, and lo and behold, it seems to be. Boy, I don't know that I would be enjoying any one of these books if I wasn't reading all three of them. I feel like I need all new Uncanny and Uncanny right now. But anyway, so this book is so this issue is really that kind of permeating into this book, and some more kind of philosophizing about it. We get the other side of it a little bit too. We finally get a little bit of why Havoc might be wrong about that, about the idea that it makes sense that he wants mutants and humans to be able to live together as as equals, but to call mutant the M word and to not be able to be proud of that might also be an issue. Maybe it's not that black and white. I'm glad that comes up, and there's also a really amusing joke in this of everybody getting annoyed at Wolverine's nicknames, and I just think that's very funny.
Yeah, I thought all the philosophy stuff was great. I loved that. Kitty Pryde, especially, was the one to have that kind of strong opinion.
Yeah.
In that instance, because that's very in her character. She's very opinionated, very driven woman. So I really liked that she was the one having that dialogue with the characters. And it's interesting to see the young X-Men's perspective on this whole thing, especially since being a mutant is, even in the world, the idea of mutants existing was new when they were transported here.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so they were in this whole debate that they had to have been thinking about, I'm sure, because from their point of view, when their powers emerged, they were still people. Because mutants weren't like a race or subculture yet. Not necessarily. They were all sort of in hiding. So I find that to be really interesting. So it's the same sort of thing with Guardians, where it's a Bendis book. It's very talky, but all the dialogue is extremely gripping, and we do get some big action here, and a stunning cliffhanger as always.
I'm glad to see. I'm glad to see Cyclops and Jean Grey at least talking again.
Yeah, I like that too.
I'm glad that's back. I have a minor complaint. You mentioned that the cliffhanger is really cool. I thought so too. I just wish it hadn't been bookended with it, because it kind of opens with the same reveal. Like it does that non-linear thing of, look, this crazy thing's going to happen, and then it ends with, look, this crazy thing is now happening. I wish they'd left it for the end. I think it would have been more impactful. I don't know why we had to open with it. It was almost as if Bendis was afraid that maybe this book has been. I don't want to get in his head too much. I just wonder if maybe the fear was it's been too talky. We need to open it with a big action thing, or with a big, at least double page spread action looking scene. Shock us into wanting to keep going. No, Bendis, you got me with the dialogue, man. I'm good. I'm with you, man. I don't need gimmicks, and I felt like that was a little gimmicky, but that's it.
That's a good point. I kind of had forgot about that. It's sort of like we had talked about the Angel reveal, how that was handled before, just between the two books publishing-wise. This is more of an issue with this specifically, but it's the same sort of issue with the reveal,
Well, let's go ahead and move on. Uncanny X-Men number 7. And as always, I'm going to let you start and run point on this because this is the Dormammu stuff, which is okay, but man, this is never my thing, and I don't know what to say about it, and it kind of just... My eyes glaze over a little bit, Dan. What do you think? I mean, I open it up, and here, I gotta say this real quick. This is the experience I had with it. Reveal. Doctor Strange, and I went, well, Dan's gonna be excited. I mean, that's precisely what I did. I was just like, okay, all right, whatever.
As soon as I saw Stephen Strange's very, very cool full-page reveal here, I was sold, man. I was ready to read this and be very excited about it.
What did you think of the issue itself? I mean, this is all pretty much told in flashback. How'd you feel about that?
I'm not sure if I necessarily loved that it was framed that way, but I think it worked pretty well in that this has been Magic's story so far, so it made sense. It's been very centric as to her relationship with this dimension and her powers and everything. It's been very Magic-centric, so I feel like it made sense for him to go there. I don't necessarily think it was a good idea to tell it in flashback after having the first 2 issues of the story not like that. It's a little bit jarring for me personally. If I were to sit down and read it sequentially, in order, not month to month, it would be even more jarring. But I like what he does with all the characters here, where we have the kids sort of questioning, again, if these people are qualified to be teaching them anything, when they can't even... get a hold of their own powers, and it's almost like it's this interesting thing where Cyclops, the young Cyclops, is being thrust into the position of old Cyclops. Everyone's judging him for the killing of Xavier, and old Cyclops has regressed back to where he was when he was younger, where he has to learn to use his powers again.
That's really interesting.
He took the 2 characters and flipped the positions on them, and it's really interesting.
I love that one of the young X-Men, one of the New Mutants, has this this line where he's like, man, I've seen you on TV using that laser vision of yours, knocking stuff out. Why can't you do that anymore? You're not qualified to teach people how to use your powers when yours are in flux and you don't know what you're doing anymore. And I like how Bendis is writing Cyclops, because Cyclops has to expect that criticism, and he does. He's trying really hard to hold the whole thing together. It's somewhat endearing watching him trying to make it work. Even if I still am kind of terrified of this character at this moment. You know what I mean? He's still kind of a scary guy. But like we talked about before and examined this. I mean, I can see where he's coming from in a lot of cases, and so I like that he doesn't break. I appreciate that.
I like that too, and it's the way you would expect Cyclops to deal with things if he's in this situation too, because that's how he was taught to deal with it when he was younger. Professor Xavier took these kind of kids that didn't really know how to use their powers, sort of taught them, but he really put costumes on them and threw them out into the public eye and was like, fight Magneto, It calls into some interesting questions about whether Xavier is really this benevolent figure that they've lionized him as since AVX. I think it puts his methods and how Scott perceives them, I guess, into question a little bit. And I think that fits this book well, because it's sort of the darker, edgier of the 2 X-Men books.
Magic is scary because she's so powerful. I mean, she's too powerful. I won't give it away, but the way she solves this problem, I'm like, oh wait, you can do that? Holy crap, if you can do that, everyone should be running away and cowering in fear at you, man. I mean, man, if there was ever another big giant crossover, Superman might think he hates magic right now, but he would really hate magic. because...
And I think one of the things you don't realize, too, is because you said you're not really interested in the Dormammu and Doctor Strange stuff, is the way she deals with this. For me, Dormammu is like one of the most powerful, like, interdimensional beings in the Marvel Universe, and what happens here, how Dormammu is eventually dealt with, that says even more about how powerful this character is. So, she's a big deal. And the revelation with Doctor Strange at the end I found to be really interesting, because I don't want to spoil anything, but time travel is now coming into this book, too.
I also think that that's the reason this issue is framed the way it is. I think that the whole framework of telling it in past tense that way is just for that reveal at the end, and that makes me wish that the whole thing had been structured differently. That this arc had been structured differently. I would have, if I'd been Bendis. I'm surprised he didn't do this. If I had been Bendis, I would have bookended it that way. I would have opened it with us maybe hearing her, or given narration boxes with her talking in past tense, but not knowing it's her yet, and then find out it's her at the end.
She's talking to, and then we reveal it's Doctor Strange.
Yeah, that would have framed the whole thing together better, because as it is, this feels like too much of a standalone issue, but it's totally capping off that arc. So that's weird.
Yeah, I agree. And
I don't mean to belabor that issue, but it just occurred to me that that's why they did that, I think.
Yeah, and it's so cool how interconnected the Marvel Universe is now, because we've got Bendis doing time travel, multiversal stuff in his X-Men books. He just did a huge event that opened the floodgates for all that to happen. We have an Infinity event coming up that deals with all that. There's an X-Men crossover coming up where the X-Men from the future, the past, and the present are all going to meet each other. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think they're going somewhere.
And
with all this multiversal time travel stuff.
Don't forget about Thor.
Yeah, that's true. And Captain America's in another dimension right now, too.
I mean, like, boy, I have never seen either of these companies have their ducks in a row like this before, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, it's like they all sat in a room one day and said, all right, so we're all going to do this thing simultaneously, and make sure that you get time travel or dimension hopping in there somewhere.
It's like a television writing staff writing the Marvel Universe. And I really like
the whole thing. I mean, because these are all their own series.
Yeah.
And they all have their own distinctive feels. That's what's so impressive about it, is that I don't feel like X-Men has one feel right now. I mean, I do feel like there's something distinctive about each of these books.
Oh, yeah, and the next book I'll talk about is, sort of the dark, humorous book of the X-Men.
Yeah, go right ahead, Dan. Yeah, start off our solo stuff. Go right ahead.
I have Wolverine the X-Men here, number 32. This is by Jason Aaron and Nick Bradshaw, as per this arc. And this just continues the hilarity of seeing the inner workings of the Hellfire Academy and how they're training people to be supervillains, and we have just these hilarious scenes of these supervillains just interacting with each other, and it's like so over the top, but like they're talking about the most despicable things at the same time, like picking people's brains and things like that. They're like so like disgustingly over the top that it's really funny. As always, I've loved Jason Aaron's sense of humor in this book specifically. Some people, I can see why the humor would turn them off, because for some people I've heard it affects how they perceive the drama in the story, and it doesn't really work for them. But I think he's able to balance it pretty well. And we're still building with that whole thing of corporate espionage, of using the mutants and making supervillains so they can make more money off of Sentinels and that kind of thing. That idea is still really interesting. And Mystique and Sabretooth, their plan from All New X-Men is sort of seeping into this book a little bit now. So even this book is becoming connected with the rest of the X-Men books.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Yes, it's very, very cool stuff. And as we know, this book, along with All New Uncanny and Brian Wood's book, are going to be doing that big crossover Battle of the Atom coming up soon. So after this arc, I'm sure we'll get some setup for that. So this is just the next chapter in this story. It's sort of like the middle chapter, so not a lot of big plot stuff happens, but it just continues to be really good. I really enjoyed this issue as well.
It seems to be a week for those, doesn't it?
X-Men's just firing on all cylinders.
But I mean, it seems to be a week for like the mid-chapter kind of books. Like,
oh yeah, very true.
Yeah. which is not a problem. You need those sometimes. I'm glad that they're not like padding anything out. You know, it's not just like the pages aren't sitting there. There's stuff going on. You know, we're going to be glad to have some of those characterizations that might feel superfluous right now. I just have a lot of belief in this whole Marvel Now thing right now.
Me too.
You know, like I have a lot of faith. They pulled
it off as well as they did. To be honest,
it's
amazing.
They're doing things that if they'd done it 6 months ago, I might have been kind of like this. But I've got so much faith in them right now that they're doing these things where I say, well, you know, you've been trustworthy enough to pay other things off, so I kind of believe you'll probably pay this off too. You know, and I mean, like they've earned that. So that's. I'm just stoked, man. This is one of the.
Yeah, me too.
Such a good time to read
a Marvel fan.
Yeah, that's just what I was saying. Yeah, oh, that's great. Dan, I'm going to go to something completely different now. Here comes some DC. Batman Superman #1. This has been somewhat long awaited. People have been kind of excited to see what this is going to be like. This is by Greg Pak and Jai Lee. So I love Lee's art, man. I don't know what it is with people not related whose last names are Lee at DC, but I really like this art. This is so interesting. I don't know what I think of this book overall. Let me just say that. This is a tough one to review right out the gate. I feel like I need more. I know I've said that with #1s before. This is one of those. Let me also say, without saying anything else, that I'm going to give this another go. I'm going to try at least a second issue. But this is kind of like the beginning of Batman and Superman meeting in 52, which immediately made me scratch my head because I didn't think that Batman and Superman had met before Justice League. And now I kind of feel like I need to go back and look at that again because maybe I'm not remembering that right. But I thought they hadn't met yet. But then, and I'm not going to give away anything other than to say there's some time travel stuff in this, because I guess that's what we're doing right now at DC. I guess Marvel too, you know. But there's some time travel stuff supposed to ultimately explain that. But I guess you get the sense that like Batman and Superman met before. Maybe they were supposed to, or something. I'm a little confused about this. I have to be honest with you. You get to see like Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne meet, and they seem to have immediate issues with each other, and immediately issues with each other's cities, which is kind of interesting. I think that's kind of fun. Basically, there's this kind of murder mystery where Clark. He's doing some actual investigative reporting, which is cool. You don't get to see Clark Kent do enough investigative reporting outside of being Superman, and he comes to Bruce Wayne, and he has a legitimate reason to go see Bruce Wayne, which I really like. And this is as far as we can tell at the beginning, before either of them know who the other person is. There's a little bit of a hint that maybe at least one of them already is aware. And Clark goes to Bruce Wayne and he says, there's some Wayne Enterprise employees that work in Metropolis that have been murdered. So I'm going to come to you and talk to you about that. So that's a good setup. It makes a lot of sense. We get kind of a neat juxtaposition between not so much Metropolis and Gotham, but Smallville and Gotham, kind of the upbringing of these two men. And I think it's interesting that it opens up with them looking a little boyish. In fact, at first, for a minute, I thought they were kids. I was like teenagers, and I was like, oh wait, they're not teenagers. He's investigative reporter Clark Kent. All right, but this is jeans and t-shirt Superman days, which immediately got me excited. And Dan, he's written that way. This is that Superman that is a lot brasher, and he's a lot more willing to take chances and to scare people and do that kind of stuff, which is a neat idea to do in a Batman Superman book, because suddenly these two people would not be so different, right? In their tactics. So I think that's kind of interesting. But they sure feel like they are. They sure think they are. You got that going on. And you do get, I think what I guess a lot of Batman and Superman fans would kind of want in a first issue like this, you do get a big fight between them. There is that, which is kind of fun. And I like that Batman immediately is like, I'm going to get my butt handed to me. There's no way I'm going to get through this. But he holds his own as well as could be expected, and then it loses me. It completely loses me at the end, and that's why I gotta try a second issue and see where they're going with it, because all of a sudden there's, like I said, some weird, as far as I can tell, time travel stuff at the end, and I'm like, it felt like a little bit of a cheat to me. I hope it's cool, but I kind of would have liked just more of a low-key early Batman, early Superman story. I'm not sure if I want the present or the future or whatever impinging on the past in this book. We've done so much of that in New 52 already. So I don't know. This is some of the most interesting art I've seen in a while. It's almost like if Norman Rockwell was creepy. I mean, that's the best way I can put it. It's
that's
really
a very good way to put it.
It's really interesting. I feel like sometimes setting is a little bit of a problem because there's not a lot of backgrounds. So sometimes it's a little bit tough to tell or remember where you are at a given point. The lack of background is intentional, which I like. It's not that 90s thing of just, let's just put a blank color in the background. It's cloudy, it's overcast, it's dreary, and that's all intentional. It's just sometimes difficult to tell where we are at any given moment. I want to give this another chance. As I'm talking about it, I think I'm liking it even better than I was when I was reading it. So yeah, I'm going to give a lukewarm recommendation for this first issue, hoping that lukewarm turns into more enthusiastic next time.
I wish that they had put jeans and t-shirt Superman on the cover of that book. I might have been a little bit more inclined to check it out if it was, because I had assumed that it was just current continuity Superman because it was drawn that way on the cover. But
yeah, well, and the thing is, they might have done that so that they weren't false advertising, because depending on what they're doing, like I said, I mean, there seems to be some time travel involved. Depending on what they're doing, he might only be jeans and t-shirt in that first issue, and if that's the case, but I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. But I'm just saying, like, if they get rid of that real fast, you might appreciate that they didn't tell you that right away, because you and I, with the Morrison stuff, I think we both said that, like, we wish that they had held on to that a lot longer. So maybe they're trying to make sure that we don't think that we're getting something we're not getting, you know? And if that's the case, I'm not going to dog on that cover. Also, it's a really pretty cover, too.
Oh, yeah. It looks fantastic. Nothing against the art itself on the cover. I love Jay Lee's stuff. But go
right ahead.
The next book I have is Hawkeye number 11. This is by Fraction and Aha, and, well, the cover says rough, as you can see, because this is an issue completely told from the perspective of Pizza Dog, which is Hawkeye's dog that he had rescued. It was a homeless dog in one of the previous issues that he had found eating pizza outside, and the dog loves pizza. And this is all told from his perspective, and this is just one of the most spectacularly cartooned issues I've seen in a while, because Fraction obviously had a script for this, and Aha drew it, but it's sort of the only dialogue that's in the issue is like that Charlie Brown adult thing where you can't understand most of the dialogue because you're looking from a dog's perspective and they only recognize certain words. So you'll get like certain words in the dialogue and you get the gist of what they're saying, but because he's a dog and you're seeing it from his perspective, you don't get the full gist of it. But it's really well written in that you get most of it, which is interesting. And then you get these interesting little grids here, and I'll show you on the page. You can sort of get what I'm talking about, how the dog will associate people with the things that he smells and sees and has experienced with them before, because that's how dogs' minds work. And you get that visualized through the artwork, and he uses that as a device as the dog goes through and investigates a mystery that had been set up in the last issue where someone was murdered on the top of Hawkeye's apartment building. So you get the dog going through all these things. It's kind of an involved story where, like, the dog gets baited by this, like, other female dog that he's friends with, and she's, like, a bad dog that works for the bro tracksuit mafia, the Russian guys, and the dog actually becomes a really interesting and endearing character by the end of this, where he's like benevolent, and it's that sort of man's best friend, unconditional love thing, and I really like that about it. This is the least mainstream superhero book I've ever seen. It's very wacky.
Consistently, it sounds.
Consistently, yeah. And it's really interesting that it's like Turtles and Daredevil, like we had spoken about before, where it'll set up these little things, and this book had started out so wacky, you're just like, oh, it's doing those things just to be wacky and fun, but then, like, for example, Hawkeye finding this dog, you never thought you'd get a full issue from his perspective and solving a mystery, you know? So it's paying off everything in its own really unique and wacky way, and I like that about it. It's really unpredictable, so I can't recommend Hawkeye enough. This is a great book.
That sounds awesome and completely non-accessible.
That issue, yeah.
So interesting, yeah, man. It's like, that sounds really thoughtful, though. Like, he obviously put a lot of thought in, like, how would a dog perceive these things? And yeah, that's so interesting.
It's very cool. If you ever want to just read something just based on how interesting it is, I definitely recommend pick up Hawkeye number 11. You don't even need to know the rest of the story.
And that sounds like, a wonderful example of what you can do with this medium you can't do with other stuff.
Exactly. That's a very good point.
I'm going to move on to Dark Knight number 21. This is finally the end of the crazy Mad Hatter nutsy story. Ooh. Man. This thing, I never thought I'd see a Mad Hatter story that got this big and this crazy. I mean, like, you know, it's Mad Hatter, and he's controlling people with hats, and the city's on fire. I mean, like, it's nuts. Last issue, I can talk about this now because it already happened. Last issue, Bruce Wayne's girlfriend, you know, the one I liked so much, yeah, she died. She's dead. So now we've got a Batman who has reason for complete revenge against Mad Hatter, and this is basically Batman doing that typical. He's really angry because somebody took something from him, and he had to go up against Mad Hatter anyway, don't get me wrong, so it's not just revenge, he has other reasons, but he's certainly fueled with rage, and I understand that, and Alfred does too, but of course you get that kind of typical Alfred, Bruce, you're too fired up right now, you're too upset, you can't go out in this kind of a rage, who knows what you'll do, and Batman's like, I don't care, I'm doing it anyway, but better written than Batman and
it's really unfortunate that Hurwitz's story, this story specifically, ended up coinciding with that just by coincidence.
I know, I don't like that, because, I mean, like, you can imagine him being enraged right now, you know,
yeah,
that
exactly.
sort of thing. And I mean, like, you know, he gets to that place where he's beaten Mad Hatter to a bloody pulp, and he's thinking about killing him. And you know, I mean, like, it's typical. You kind of expect that, but then at the same time, I understand why it's there. You know, it's all right. I gotta tell you, I am not ultra thrilled with the direction this ultimately went. First of all, I feel like it ended too abruptly, which is crazy because it went longer than I thought it would. But just for like where we were last issue to where we are this issue, there were all of these really interesting. We got so much of this arc from Mad Hatter's perspective is the thing. I mean, he was, he's not the protagonist, but we got in his head a lot to see like why he was the way he was, to get his family history, to get this really interesting worldview that I've talked about at length, where he's trying to get to recapture his past, but his past is not as great as he remembers it, which is something that we all do to some extent at different points, but we never go this far. And yeah, that's just not there anymore at the end of this. It's really kind of a TNG 5-minute wrap up, I felt like, and you get the same thing with Batman. I mean, like there was a little bit of not in your face paralleling, some nice subtle paralleling going on between this idea of Batman trying to create something that he's never been able to create with a woman for the first time, and Mad Hatter trying to recreate something that he never really had with a woman, but he felt like he thought he did from the past. Those two things happening at the same time. I guess you could kind of say they both sort of got that taken away from them, but in this last issue, there's no attention drawn to it anymore. There's no discussion of it. Mad Hatter and Batman are very much played up as two sides of the same coin in this, again, in somewhat of a more subtle way than I might have expected. It's sophisticated, it's nuanced, and at the end of this, it's just a drag down, beat 'em up fight, and you killed my girlfriend, and that's it, you know, and that's really all you get. I would have liked some kind of diatribe between them, or, you know, more of a diatribe than we got. I really would have appreciated that. Having said that, this art is amazing. This is not Simon Krasinski. This is not my dream team. This is Ethan Van Siever, who does an amazing job.
Oh, yeah, it's great. I love his stuff.
Yeah, it's back to more traditional artwork. This is going to be a weird arc to read together because the art keeps changing almost issue to issue. It's so randomly, jarringly different. I wish they had one guy through it. Having said that, I don't think that, as much as I love Krasinski, I don't think Krasinski was the guy for this issue, because this one, it's kind of Mad Hatter does this kind of crazy topsy-turvy sort of, you know, put Batman on like a Mad Hatter toxin kind of thing. You know, it's not fear toxin, but it's like it messes with his head, and it makes him see everything like Alice in Wonderland, and it's really cool looking, and it's surreal, and it's bizarre, and it's colorful, and it's creepy, and I just feel like Hurwitz wouldn't have been quite the guy for Krasinski wouldn't have been quite the guy for that, and so I'm glad that we've got this guy for this last issue, but anyway, he's got some really cool Batman facial expressions. Like, this guy does some wonderful expressive faces, and there's this great moment where Batman is about to go up against Mad Hatter, and he's in this topsy-turvy Wonderland thing, and he's got this really scary grin. It's Batman with this huge grin on his face, and I loved that. That was great. I wish they hadn't killed his girlfriend. I really liked her, and she's not going to be remembered. Nobody's going to remember this character. You know, she was in a few issues. She's gone. We've done this before. I feel like it's kind of just typical Batman fare. Batman, was dating a girl for a while. Maybe she was the one. No, she's not the one. He's Batman. We got to keep telling sequential stories. You know, so I hate that. I mean, he went a little farther with it. You know, she got to know he was Batman, and they did some neat paralleling between their characters too. At the end of the day, this is going to go down as insignificant, and that's not fair because it's better than that.
Yeah, if he was on a bigger title, it wouldn't have. Like, if Snyder had tried to do the same thing, I think she would have become, a major recurring character in the Bat books.
Yeah. So, that's sad. Now, I recommend it. I think it's still a good issue. I enjoyed it, but it was disappointing, certainly, for me, having been reading it for a while. Read it for the art, though, because it's pretty. It's great. And read it for creepy Batman smiles. Go ahead, Dan.
My next one is Captain America #8. This is by, of course, Rick Remender and John Romita Jr. And man, was this a great issue. This is probably my favorite issue of the series so far, actually. This breaks Steve Rogers down to his lowest point physically and from an idealistic standpoint. We get a clone of Captain America here that Aaron Zola had made fighting with Ian, Captain America's son, sort of, that he had raised in Zola's dimension. He was a clone of Captain America's DNA, and Zola had kind of called him his son, and Captain America took him and raised him. That's the whole thing that had been going on throughout the series so far. So he's fighting his son and this clone of himself, and they're sort of questioning Captain America's idealism as they're, like, beating him to a bloody pulp. And, he's almost dead by the time this issue starts, and he's still fighting on. So they're sort of questioning, like, why do you wear the flag costume? Do you think America is culturally superior to all other nations in the world, and you're just trying to spread our influence and all of that sort of the influence of your culture that you think is superior? That's so egotistical of you. And they're asking all these questions of him, and he doesn't really have answers for them. And even if he did, he couldn't answer them because he can't speak. He's so physically broken in this fight. And it's a really, really powerful fight scene between the two of them. Obviously, not only because he's fighting his son, but with all those other things going on. And then Remender does something that just breaks your heart if you've been reading this book so far. He kills a character off that we had been invested in the whole time.
No, really?
Yeah. And it's a heartbreaking death, and it works well for the story thematically, but I'm not going to say that I wasn't a little bit pained by it in a good way, I suppose. And we're setting up this big invasion where Aaron Zola is going to take this race of people that he thinks are superior to everybody else because they're injected with his essence, and he'll be able to control everybody literally on Earth, invading from this other dimension. So that's going to be another big thing coming into Marvel now, threat-wise, I guess. Another interdimensional threat. So that will be cool to see. And I'm just loving this book. I feel like this is a Marvel Now book that not a lot of people are talking about, just because I feel like it's flying under the radar a little bit, but it's just as good as the other stuff I'm reading, I would have to say. I'm really, really enjoying this. Highly recommended from me. Remender can do no wrong. So far, I don't think.
Yeah, that's a good question. Why more people aren't reading that book? I mean, I've just never regularly read Captain America, so I know you picked it up because of Remender, and for me, I was just sort of like, well, I got one Remender book, I'm all right, you know. Yeah, so I wonder if it's not just, well, we had the same guy doing that forever, you know, and now he's gone. So I wonder if people just aren't sure about Captain America written by somebody else.
Yeah, I think so. I think that might be it too, and such a drastic shift in tone and focus. Whereas before it was an espionage book, now he went back to a little bit more of the action adventure sci-fi Kirby-esque kind of stuff. Well, which I'm really liking. It's a little bit more fantasy driven, which is cool.
Dan, next thing I've got is Ghostbusters #5. Of course, Eric Burnham with art by Schoening still, and they've taken off the new Ghostbusters off the top now. Now it just says Ghostbusters again. If that was the plan all along, then that makes perfect sense. They were saying that for a while because, of course, our main four guys were trapped in another dimension. They've now come back from that other dimension, and they were a little surprised by how easy that was. And there's a lot of talk in this, like they're a little afraid that maybe there's going to be consequences to how easy it was for their getting out. I gotta tell you, I'm questioning what Burnham is doing with this book to a degree. It's still really good. It's still really funny. He's juggling a lot of characters now, and I really didn't expect this early for us to be juggling this many characters in this book, because it being Ghostbusters, I still want to see the main focus be on the main four guys. So
right, of course.
I'm glad that they're back now, but we're still dividing a lot of attention between people, and I feel like that is maybe as frustrating for Burnham as it is for me, because what he's, and that sounds bad, I mean, it's not bad, it's just I feel like he is struggling a little bit to not keep everybody straight. He's got voices for these characters, he knows who they are, and he clearly has plans for them, but I think he's having a hard time deciding how much screen time to give each of them, how much he wants them in this book. Is this a book about our four Ghostbusters, or is this a book about Ghostbusters becoming a much bigger franchise? Are we going to have Ghostbusters in different places? Are we going to have 7 or 8 people all in the same place? What are we going to do with this? And what this issue does is, first of all, this is a good jumping on point. I think this actually probably reads better if you have no idea what's going on, which sounds stupid. But the thing is, each couple pages, you're reintroduced to some of these characters and told who they are and what purpose they serve. Like Burnham recognizing, it's sort of like in a Marvel book where you'll get a big team of X-Men, so next to each of their names, they'll tell you who they are and what their power sets are. This is exactly
a way of introducing the characters.
Precisely. Well, this is the same thing, and you would never have expected to see that in Ghostbusters. And that's what we've got going on in this issue. And I think it's just him saying, I recognize I've introduced you to lots of people, and here's who they all are. But he does have some fun with that. He has a little bit of humor with it. Like he introduces Ray as like I think the heart of the group or something, and then you get to the Venkman, and he introduces him as the mouth of the group, which I just think is very funny.
That's awesome.
So there's some cool stuff like that. It's fun to see like where some of the new Ghostbusters are versus where they were before. Like we have this new team of 4, and they're not all still on the team, which I kind of appreciate. You've got Ray. I think it's Ray dating one of the old Ghost Smashers who wasn't even part of the new Ghostbusters. One of that old team, the Ghost Smashers, they got shut down because they were storing ghosts illegally and using bad equipment and stuff, and that was really cool. But I like that now Ray is dating one of them. That's pretty cool. And you've got Kaylee, who's kind of a fan favorite now with a lot of people. I'm hearing, who was a character in the Extreme Ghostbusters, and she's been brought into this book. And she's still fun, and she's like the big hard worker of the group. Like now some of the others have left, but she's still there, and she's working harder than anybody. And she and Venkman have to go up against a ghost train, which is really kind of fun. And things finally start coming together at the end with something bad that happens to Janine with a ghost. And so it looks like that's going to launch us into a new arc. But a lot of this is just kind of, reminding us who these people are, and that sort of thing. I really wish that they had left Janine a Ghostbuster. because that was fun. Like, she was the leader of the group while the four of them were gone, and now she's not doing field work anymore. Now she's back in the office, and I was having so much fun with seeing her being more at the forefront. I get the sense that because of what they do with her at the end, Burnham still kind of wants her to be a major part of this book, but I like to see her still busting ghosts. That's just my 2 cents.
That'd be awesome.
But anyway, yeah, this is good. I don't like it as well as I did back before this relaunch started, but I like it. It's still quite good. Go ahead, Dan.
My next book is Scarlet Spider, number 18. This is Yost and Barry again. And this continues the arc in which Kane had been forcibly contracted by the League of Assassins. That is from the Nolan Batman films. This is the League of Assassins in Marvel that Gambit used to be associated with. I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
I don't remember either, especially now that you've done that.
Night. But anyway.
Yeah.
We have that whole plot going on here. At the end of the last issue, we had been left with a cliffhanger, think that Wolverine was dead. And, of course, this is modern Marvel. Wolverine doesn't get killed off in a book called Scarlet Spider that's a satellite book. Of the Spider-Man titles. That kind of stuff just doesn't happen anymore.
I kept thinking, what is he doing in this book? Maybe he's dead.
Right. So Wolverine is not dead. Actually, it's funny how Yost plays it here. He does die and then he is revived. So the killing actually is successful, but he is revived by Beast in a kind of funny way. So he plays it off for humor, which is nice. You're not thinking too deep about it. It's not really contrived or anything. So it's fun. And we have Wolverine and Kane interacting here, which is a lot of fun. They have some nice parallels with each other in the way they look at the world and the things they have to do to accomplish their mission, obviously, because they're both not above killing. But they do have that sort of loose moral code that's sort of interesting with characters that are like this. And they, of course, being two characters that are like, having the personalities they have, they don't like each other. And Wolverine makes this really funny joke. He's like, what are you, Spider-Man's evil clone? And Kane goes, yeah. and that was a really funny moment. And there's some other stuff in here that's really cool. The Assassin's Guild, that's what they're called. And at the end here, we have some a revelation about the whole contract with the Assassin's Guild, and it may look like this is bigger than they had all realized, and maybe that the Assassin's Guild, like Wolverine and Kane, have been forced into the situation too. So it's getting bigger and bigger and ramping up to a bigger story. So that's pretty cool to see. And this book continues to be the most Spider-Man-like book, along with Venom, on the stands right now. So if you like Spider-Man, you should buy it, because this is the closest thing actually to Peter Parker that you're going to get in a book too, his evil clone. So there you go.
Wow, boy, you never could have predicted any of that back in the 90s, could you, Dan?
No.
For the record, League of Assassins is comic book Batman. League of Shadows is Nolan Batman.
Yes, you're right.
And Assassin's Guild.
Yeah, that's right, because Bane says, I am the League of
Shadows. All right, the last thing I've got, Dan, is Star Trek number 22, which is more of doing Amic time badly. Okay, your turn. No, yeah, I didn't care for this very much, I gotta tell you. Some of it's taste stuff. I just don't care for the direction they decided to take this story, but I don't want to be a hypocrite. I said early on that part of the problem with this series was that they were doing original episodes too close to the original episodes. Well, now I mean my words, because this is very, very different, and I don't like it. So, there you go. Well, doing Amok Time is a really strange idea, or at least doing it this way, because, and I think we talked about this a little bit when I reviewed 21, Spock has a girlfriend, so I have a really hard time understanding why he's got to go back to Vulcan. I mean, like, they're doing the I appreciate that they're trying to to sort of stick to what it was in the original series before it got changed, because other Vulcans in Star Trek post that have gone through Ponfar, and they were able to get through it with non-Vulcan women who, or men, because we even have females going through Ponfar later, which is weird. But like they were able to do it without going to Vulcan and without Vulcans. But here we got to go to at least the closest thing to Vulcan, which is New Vulcan, and it's got to be his betrothed. Vulcan lady. Now, the question is, Dan, why would Spock even consider dating if he's betrothed? That was, the first question I had, and then they kind of backtrack, and they're like, well, Spock, like they try to cover this up, and they're like, well, when Spock left the Vulcan Academy, he also told his betrothed that they weren't betrothed anymore, and that she could go, Ponfar with whoever she wanted to, and I was like, all right, well, this just isn't very interesting. I mean, it's still to Pring. She looks totally different. She looks entirely different, but it's still to Pring. But she doesn't really care one way or the other, it doesn't seem like, and she's not trying to get with some other Vulcan like she was in Amok Time. She's not. She doesn't have that Stan guy running around or anything. It's just, well, I was supposed to be betrothed to Spock, but I mean, he annulled that a long time ago, so whatever. So he goes to New Vulcan. I do like that they found a planet that was really hot like Vulcan, so hot that they got lava everywhere, apparently.
Oh, cool.
And so there are apparently these really caveman type almost Vulcans that have given up on the Vulcan logic way, that have all gone off on their own. And we've had sects of Vulcans in other Star Trek media that have sort of done something similar, where they embrace their emotions, but not to the point where they're just totally primitive caveman looking guys like they are here. And Spock, in not being able to finish, out his Ponfar right, it goes off with them, and that's what happens. Really strange. Anyway, some odd choices in this book. There's some politics stuff with the Romulans trying to ally themselves with Earth with every intention of going against that later. That stuff's kind of interesting. And then we got the Klingons kind of loading for bear and about to be ready to go up against the Federation. So I don't know. Once we get past this Ponfar stuff, it might get interesting. But I just don't like how they changed Amok Time. Again, change stuff, but make it interesting. I just didn't think this was very interesting. That's all.
Right, yeah, the politics with the Romulans sounds interesting to me, because I remember you had told me that the Romulans were supposed to parallel the Chinese in original series, and that's sort of the relationship that America and the Chinese had economically, where they've entangled and allied with each other, but they're sort of uneasy allies at the same time.
Yeah, well, they're there to get specific things from Earth. I mean, the idea is, right now it's it's going to be strategic for us to align with Earth, and they have some things we want, but eventually...
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was between the Chinese and the Americans.
But we will destroy them. It's like that, yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And do they make Uhura get all, high school teenage drama like she does in the movies about Spock having to go to Ponfar and have betrothed and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's still, just like the movies, that's the only purpose she serves, is to be a confused, whiny girlfriend of a man she doesn't understand. And I'm not interested in that. It's just not interesting. I mean, that's what you're going to get when you date a half Vulcan. It's going to happen. And she has all this dialogue where she's like, yeah, I knew there would be parts of him I wouldn't understand, but I'm just like, why do we have to so heavily romanticize our female characters? Why can't she at least have other interesting things she's doing?
Right.
She is such a stereotypical, old school, stereotypical, like you said, kind of whiny high school kind of chick, and I don't know why people have been okay with that depiction of her. It's sort of like, well, she's smarter than the old Uhura in that she seems to have Hoshi Sato's skill level set from Enterprise, so I guess that's cool, and I guess that's enough for people, where it's just like, well, she's really good at her job, and so she's an independent woman. Whatever. These are men who do not know how to write women, and they're not even trying. That's how I feel about it. Anyway, go ahead, Dan.
My next book is Aquaman number 21. This is by Jeff Johns and Paul Pelletier, the usual team on this book, as it has been since Reese and Prado left on the art duties. And this continues to be one of my favorite things being published. This is probably my favorite DC book, too. Batman still continues to be very good, but I really like this. Jeff Johns is doing something really interesting with Aquaman here. That's always been there thematically, but I was just sort of thinking about it when I was reading the opening sort of crawl what they do when they introduce the character, and it was done in an interesting way here where it was directed really to the story, and Aquaman was sort of talking about the status quo that he's in now. And I realized what Jeff Johns is sort of trying to position Aquaman as here, and it makes a lot of sense. Aquaman is the exact thematic opposite of Superman. Aquaman is a man that was raised in a culture, and it was his birthright to be the king of the society that he is of the race of, but he wasn't raised there, and he's forced to go back there and inspire those people instead of the people that he was raised in. And it's this really interesting reluctance that he has, because he's like, I don't understand these people. I don't know how I'm supposed to inspire and lead these people when they don't say, and I don't know what their expectations for me are. And it's a really interesting look at it in that way. So it makes sense for Aquaman to be a bit darker than Superman, that he's okay with killing most of the time because he's a regal ruler and all that sort of thing. It's really cool. So if you like Superman and you want to see a little bit different take on that idea, this is a good book to see that done with. Other than that, the plot continues to be really interesting, in that we have some of the things from Throne of Atlantis continuing to pay off here. The Atlantean technology stuff is coming back, where there's this guy that's collecting Atlantean technology. We hadn't known why. That's revealed here, and it's really interesting. He continues to do things with the resurrected first king of Atlantis, who's all icy and scary, and we don't really know all too much about him yet, but he meets Arthur here, and we finally look like we're going to get a fight between those two. And we get more about Mira's past as well. She goes into the Bermuda Triangle. We learn where she comes from, and that whole society, and they have a beef culturally with the Atlanteans, and that's all really interesting. So it continues to have that really interesting politics and character-driven stuff that I've loved about this book since the first issue, and I can't get enough of it. Aquaman is, other than Wally West, who doesn't exist, so I suppose he is my favorite DC character now. Aquaman, I'm just so glad he has a book that's this good. It's great stuff.
What's your last book, Dan?
My last book is Star Wars Legacy #4. This is Karina Pacheco and Gabriel Hogman, the husband and wife duo, doing Star Wars here at Dark Horse. And this continues to be probably the best Star Wars thing that they're putting out. Very, very interesting parallels with the original trilogy stuff, but it's done in such an interesting and different way, in that we have the supporting cast of this book being developed, and we're just sort of spending time with these characters and getting to know them at this point. It's moving at a pace that we're not really getting into the big plot stuff yet. We're getting some action scenes that are propelling character-driven stuff, and I like that about it a lot. It's not necessarily concerning itself with getting into the big plot of things yet. We're getting little glimpses of things, like there's the floating world, which had been the title of this arc so far, is introduced here, and we know how it works, but not why people are after it, and that sort of thing. It's a mystery to be revealed later on, which will be interesting to see. But there's a major turning point in here with one of the characters that have been introduced that I really liked, and I didn't see coming. It was a very shocking thing at the end here, so that was very cool to see. And I don't know, I'm just really stoked to continue seeing the Star Wars universe in this really interesting gray position that looks like it's going to have to be fixed by going back to more of a black and white thing, which is totally Star Wars. So I really like that about it. It feels like Star Wars the most out of all the books that are being put out, ironically, and it's set in a different time period. So it's really good stuff. The artwork continues to be fantastic, too. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. It's great stuff.
Surely it doesn't feel more like Star Wars than Star Wars.
It actually kind of does.
Weird! That's hilarious.
Yeah, because it doesn't have that sort of, I guess, connotation where, not that it's the Star Wars book is superfluous, but it's like tales of in between with those characters, you know what I mean, between the films. This feels like it could be its own space opera movie thing, you know?
Yeah, so with the Star Wars book, with that other Star Wars book, it's like, these are the scenes that no one would ever think to actually put on film.
Right, and they're interesting scenes, and I'm loving reading that book, and the characters' voices are all great, but it's just not necessarily the Star Wars book I would ideally want, because,
sure, yeah.
You know, this book has, like, you know, sparingly, which is good, Jedis fighting each other, we get the blaster scenes, the ships, we get every sort of type of action scene that you want in a Star Wars story in this one issue alone, let alone the other ones that have come so before. In the Star Wars book, all we got is X-Wing battles so far, you know? So...
Yeah. Well, Dan, it's time now for a book of the week. I'm going to go first this time, and yes. I am choosing Ninja Turtles.
Oh, and I don't blame you. That and the book that I picked were very close, I think. I really did enjoy Turtles, but I'm going to have to go with Daredevil. I think this is one of the best single issues I've read all year. And I'm with you on Turtles, too. That's up there, too. When me, you, and hopefully Manos, when we do the video for this year of our top issues, this and that will probably be on my list because I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, this might be, but I gotta see what else they put out. I also have to be careful about top 10 this year because I want to make sure that not too much of it is Ninja Turtles, because I can tell you right now, halfway through the year, I will be very surprised if by the end of the year that Krang one-shot is not on that list, man.
Yeah,
because I was so in love with that issue, man. And since mine and your polls line up so much and we review together, it's going to be really interesting to see how much of the same issues show up on our list this time.
That's very true.
Because we sort of read together. We're like reading buddies now, so it'd be kind of interesting to see how that works. I've never done this with anybody before, by the way, Dan. I mean, that's part of the reason I wanted you on the show. I've never like read with someone, so it's really kind of cool.
Yeah, I really like doing that. And it'll be interesting to see how many together books and how many solo books we have on that list, because I'm sure, like, I'll have an issue of Aquaman on there, I'm sure, and some other things, but for the most part, you know.
I feel like I get so much more out of my reading experience these days having somebody else to bounce off of right after I get finished reading. Like your perspective always gives me a lot more that I hadn't thought of before. And so, anyway, I've never had more fun reading comics since I started the show with you, Dan.
Oh, same here. I'm so glad that you have me on every week. It's a pleasure and an honor, and you know, I love doing it, and I hope you guys enjoy it too, because we're having the best time of our lives here just reading this stuff. It's great.
We've been getting fantastic feedback on it, and thanks everybody for watching. And anyway, that's it for us this week. So if you're, again, ever in the Kansas City area, be sure to check out Elite Comics. They're helping us out with the show, and so I want to give them a quick plug. Also, if there's anything you ever want to send to Geekvolution for us to review on the Vault, you can send that to our P.O. Box. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. Dan and I will be with you again next week with more brand new comic book reviews. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Dan.
Happy reading.